Hey, so you guys, we're at chapter 4. It's Thursday. We've made it through this week, and tomorrow we're just gonna spend time possibly reading chapter 5 together in class, just to kind of recap and see where we are. I think that's what we'll do. So let's go ahead and hit chapter 4. I still want you to be focusing on time travel. Again, yesterday you told me what you think about time travel with your own schema, your own thoughts, but we're going to keep looking at what is the purpose behind time travel, okay? So, chapter 4, with that in mind, let's keep going. Hey man, that's some house, Jordan whispered. What's it like inside? I don't know, said Uriah. I ain't never been in there. You mean to tell me that you work on this place and you've never been inside that house? I is a field hand. Field slaves ain't allowed to go in the big house. Only the cooks and maids and manservants get to go in there. But us field slaves, we doesn't like the house help. They's too uppity. Sorry guys, excuse me, I just ate some pie. They think they special and they spy on us field hands. Now the word uppity is the equivalency to bougie. Uppity means you think that you're better than someone else. Now, earlier in the year we talked about slaves and we talked about field slaves and then we talked about house slaves. The house slaves were usually light skinned and the field slaves were usually darker skinned. So the house slaves, because they worked inside, sometimes felt more privileged, felt like they were better than the field slaves. So when he uses the word uppity, that's what he's talking about. Uriah, that's what he's talking about. But that's not fair, Jordan said. You ought to tell the master to let you go in that house. It ain't my place to tell the master what to do. Well, if you don't, then I will. You better not. They can't hurt me. I'm free. That don't seem too likely, Uriah said. Jordan wondered what he meant, but didn't ask. Uriah stopped and stood in front of him. You better not let nobody in the big house see you. They's gonna ask where you from. And if you can't answer straight off, the master, he'd be sending you to the trader. If you is lucky, he might let you stay around here and work. Hey, cut that out, Jordan said. I'm not a slave. Tomorrow morning, you're going to take me back to that puddle and we're going to find that watch. I can't, Uriah said. Like I told you, I is picking cotton from sunup to sundown. Can't you sneak out on your lunch hour? Jordan asked. What are you talking about, lunch hour? Don't they give you an hour off for lunch? Everybody eats an hour off for lunch. The kid stared at Jordan as if he didn't understand plain English. Don't you get to eat in the middle of the day? Even when Jordan asked the question in a different way, Uriah stared blankly at him. What was his problem anyway? Had the kid suddenly gone deaf? Do you go home to eat? Jordan spoke slow and loud. Then in that same voice he said, I was thinking you could skip lunch and run back to the woods with me then. We doesn't go home to eat, Uriah said. We eats our corn cake in the field, and if we goes away, we gets a whipping. The overseer and the driver, they's watching us every minute, flicking their whips. Jordan finally got the picture and tried to push it out of his mind. Then when can you lead me back to the woods? When and if I get another pass from the master to look for his watch. Jordan grabbed the neck of Uriah's shirt and said, I'm going up to that house with you, and you'd better ask for a pass. If you don't, I'll give you a pounding you won't forget. Then he let Uriah go with a shove. The kid caught himself before he fell backward. Jordan felt ashamed of treating him that way, especially since he was younger than him. But the kid had to understand how desperate he was. You'll be sorry, Uriah said to him. But come on ahead then. Jordan followed Uriah to the big house, but when he started up the broad steps to the front door, Uriah told him he couldn't do that. Why not? Jordan asked. You just can't, that's why. We uses the back door. That's stupid, Jordan said. Inside, he was boiling. Talk about screwed up rules. Man, The kid led him all the way around the house to the back door. A couple of big hunting dogs sniffed at them and barked. The house was a lot bigger than it seemed from a distance. It was huge. Uriah knocked, and a fat black woman dressed in a long gray dress and starch white apron came to the door. "I be needing to talk to the master," said Uriah. "He's having dinner." "I'll take the message," said the woman. Just by the snooty way she stood in the door, blocking it, Jordan knew she wasn't about to let them in. "Tell the master I is back and that I be wanting to pass for tomorrow so I can finish what he told me to do." She stretched out her hand. "Give me your pass, boy." When she took the card, she narrowed her eyes at Jordan. "Who's this?" she asked Uriah. "My name's Jordan Henning Scott." "Ain't nobody by that name on this place," she said. "What you doing carrying in the master's name?" Jordan didn't know what to say. How could he begin to tell his story to this woman with the stony face? "He say he be free," Uriah explained. The woman threw back her head and laughed. "There ain't no free niggas for miles around here. The overseer won't have no trouble whipping the truth out of him." Jordan wasn't about to let his back get scarred like Uriah's. He wanted to run, but to where? The only place he could go was into that forest with the snakes and the patty rollers. No thanks. It made more sense to stick with Uriah. If he could get a chance to explain to the master that this was all a mistake, he'd probably understand and maybe even help him return to his own time. Besides, this had to be some kind of bad dream, and the odds were he'd wake up soon. "Relax, man," he told himself. "Just go with the flow." "Wait here," the woman said to them. "The master will be wanting to talk to you." Soon another black woman wearing a long white apron came out of a little building next to the house. She was tall and muscular and carried the biggest platter of fried chicken Jordan had ever seen. It made him so hungry that he felt as if he could eat the whole thing himself. So she walked toward the back door. "What you boys doing hanging around here?" "I'm waiting to see the master about a pass," said Uriah. Jordan smacked his lips. That chicken smelled delicious. "Say," he said, "could you let us have a piece of that?" The woman stopped and stared at him. "You was asking me to get myself into one heap of trouble." "No sorry, I ain't about to take a whooping for feeding no field hands." She held the platter high, then turned to Jordan. "Where you from? I ain't seen the likes of you around here." She looked at Uriah. "You know the master don't allow no visitors calling on his slaves. What's he doing here?" "I found him in the woods," said Uriah. The big woman lowered the platter and shook her head. "You know you're not supposed to bring runaways here. That'd be the patty roller's job. I'll have to tell the master on you." "I couldn't help it," cried Uriah. "He followed me." So that's what they thought he was, a runaway. Jordan would have to set them straight. "Open that door for me, boy," she told Uriah. "I gotta get this chicken into the mistress before it get cold." There went the chicken inside with the cook. Jordan felt so starved that he could have eaten his shoe. Soon a white man with a big belly and a dinner napkin tucked under his double chin came to the door. When Uriah started to shake, Jordan knew that this had to be the master. It reminded him of the way he always shook whenever he saw King, no matter how cool he tried to act. "So," said the man, "what can I do for you, Uriah?" He spoke in a kindly voice. "Master, I be needing another pass." Uriah's voice quivered. "We didn't find the watch," Jordan said. Uriah jabbed him in the ribs with his elbow, as if warning him to shut up. The master looked at Jordan. "And just who are you, boy?" "My name is Jordan Henning Scott." "Jordan Henning Scott?" A puzzled look came over the man's face, then he smiled. "You must be descended from one of the slaves my father sold when I was a child." "Where are you from?" "Up north," Jordan said. "Where up north?" Jordan was struck dumb. How could he possibly make this man understand where he really came from? "He say he be free," said Uriah. That remains to be seen." The man said, "By the way, how did you get here? At last, Jordan had his chance to explain. It was after dark and I was heading from this street underpass, see, with my grandfather's watch. When I started down under the street, the watch ticked real loud. It didn't sound normal. And then he went on with his story, telling every detail. When he finished, Jordan glanced at Uriah, who squirmed and studied his bare toes. Jordan realized that it was the wildest sounding story he'd ever heard. And judging from the amused look on Master Henning's face, Jordan was sure the man hadn't believed a word of it. Well, boy, I reckon I have more than a few doubts about your story, and I'll believe you're free when you show me your freedom papers. You surely carry your freedom papers with you. Freedom papers? How was he supposed to know about freedom papers? Maybe he could fake it. Jordan searched in his pockets, but all he could come up with was a gum wrapper and a wrinkled old library card Grandpa had insisted he sign up for. He'd used it once. He handed it to the man. The master puzzled over the card and kept saying, very interesting indeed. Public library. It's where people go to read and borrow books, Jordan explained. Can't say I ever heard of a place like that. Certainly not a place where colors would be allowed. Then he handed the card back to him. Boy, I'm afraid this card is not a freedom paper. Whatever it is, I suspect it's stolen. Stolen? Jordan could see that he wasn't getting anywhere with this guy, and to think that a few minutes ago he was actually counting on this man to help him. And, the master went on, your clothes appear to be stolen too. Though I must admit, I've never seen anybody with clothing quite like yours. Hey, Jordan cried, you got me all wrong, mister. My mom bought me these jeans and this shirt and jacket at the shopping mall, see? And that's the truth. The man chuckled and shook his head. Boy, you has the queeriest tales I ever heard. We'll have to regard you as a runaway until we can locate your owner. In the meantime, you can stay in the slave quarters. I'll walk down there with you and ask Uriah's family to take you in, and I'll notify the overseer. You will be expected to work with our field hands starting tomorrow morning. Jordan didn't say a word, but inside he was exploding. He can't do this to me. He can't. Master, said Uriah, I'll be needing another pass to look for the watch. The watch! It was Jordan's only hope. Master Henning smiled, reached behind his napkin, and drew the watch out of his vest pocket. It couldn't be, but there it is. But there it was. The house on its cover caught the light and glowed in the setting sun. That won't be necessary, Master Henning said. You see, I hadn't lost it in the woods after all. Dr. Byers dropped it by the house this evening. It seems I'd left it at his place yesterday afternoon when he examined me for my stomach complaint. Thoughtless of me. A dark cloud of dread swept over Jordan. He could be doomed to a life of slavery forever unless he woke up from this nightmare or found some way to steal that watch. Whew, okay, so now Jordan is with his great-great-great-grandfather Uriah Henning. But Jordan doesn't necessarily want to be back in the past, especially if you have to travel to the past. You don't want to travel to the part where we're in slavery, right? So I want you to think about, we're going to synthesize this, right? So I want you to think about slavery. What do you know? What is your schema? What is your thoughts on slavery? And then I want you to think about, as we read chapter 4, have your thoughts on slavery changed at any? What are some things that you've learned about slavery based on Uriah's experience? And then I want you to look at Jordan and Uriah, because Jordan treats Uriah pretty bad, right? He's yelling at him, he's pushing him around, he's being forceful, when he already knows that Uriah is actually a relative to him. Do you think he possibly could have been a little nicer? Maybe tried a better way to explain instead of testing him with television and rap music. So we can see that even if he got the watch back and he left, him going back in time right now, what is he supposed to be getting from this experience? If you went back in time and you met your great-great-great-grandfather, do you think you'd be pushing him around or beating him up or talking to him crazy? I want you to take a look and think about that Write down your thoughts, and you can definitely pause it. I know I've given you a lot to think about, but I just want you to think about it. Look over this chapter, and I'll have some of the questions listed down below so that you'll have them listed out. I really enjoyed reading this to you this week, and I'm going to consider, after we take our spelling test and our quiz over the first 4 chapters, that we read chapter 5 together in class tomorrow, and then get some thoughts on synthesizing this together and then using our schema before we start next week's new set of reading strategies. I really enjoyed this, and I hope you guys did too. I'll see you tomorrow. Be sure to practice your spelling words, and be sure to look through chapter 1 through 4. So let's go over this again, just so there's no confusion about what's going to be on the test tomorrow. So, who are our characters so far? Jordan, his mom, Tyshell, King, who is the leader of the Cobras. We have the Lobos gang, which we haven't had any interaction with yet, but we do know they exist. We have his grandfather, who doesn't have a name, he's just grandpa. And then we have this kid who we found out is actually Uriah Henning, his great-great-great-great-grandfather. And now we also have his master, Mr. Henning, or Massa Henning. And so I want you to think about these characters, because tomorrow I'm going to ask you to describe these characters and what they're like and what you think about them so far. So let's go over what's happening in the story. So we have Jordan, who lives with his mother and his sister. His mom and dad have split. They either divorced or they're not together anymore. His dad lives probably a few states away, right? So Jordan has joined a gang in order to save up money to get back with his father, right? So one of the things he needed to do to be a part of this gang is to have a gun. So what does he do? He steals his grandfather's watch, which is actually an heirloom, which is passed down the lines, right? So he steals the watch, and on his way to pawn the watch, he actually goes through an underpass that takes him through a whole new, I would say dimension, but it takes him to the past, right? So as he goes there, he meets, as he comes to find out, his great-great-great-great-grandfather. His goal right now is to get the watch back, because when he got there, the watch disappeared. But now he finds that the Massa Henning, actually has the watch in his possession. So now he has to figure out a way to get the watch back. He's not thinking about building a relationship with his great-great-grandfather right now. His only focus is getting the watch and getting back home to get back to King, because he has a meeting where he needs to provide and show proof that he has a gun. So there's a lot of different conflicts going on in this story, and I think it's been a great read, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Again, I will see you guys tomorrow, and